Now we're going to cover some design aspects of Android Studio and then start talking about programming constructs more.
Okay. Oh, the last person you used.
Yeah, the projects stay open. Sometimes they're kind of hidden. They're not like separate windows. Because when I was trying to, there's still an issue with Android Studio that I'm working on.
Yeah.
But I was kept doing a file new project because I was trying to figure out what's going on with this, and my machine started getting slower and slower. I'm sitting here and I'm clicking down there in the Windows bar, and I'm not seeing. I see one item, so I'm thinking I'd do a new project that closes the other one automatically. It doesn't. So then when I was all done, I thought, oh, I'm just giving this up, and I started closing it. I must have had 15 Android Studio projects loaded. Yeah, I know why it was going really slow now. Everybody loaded? Okay. So we're going to click Start a New Android Studio Project. And you can give that a name if you want, but we're just going to play. Yeah, click Next. Click Next again. Now over here, we'll go ahead and choose full screen activity. So double click it, and then click Finish. And it should pop up looking something like this. Now over here on the left-hand side, I can expand these different items here. You can expand the Gradle scripts, see what's there. You can expand the app, see what's there. Now if I expand the manifest, if I double-click Androidmanifest.xml, this tells you some information about the particular project. If you want to change any of these, then you can. You can change true to false and so forth. Everything's XML driven on this. We did talk about XML in this class, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, it starts with the application, and there's a closing. Don't worry. Here it is. There's the closing greater than for the beginning. So they don't have to be on the same line. And then here's your slash application that actually closes off that XML element. Then if I expand to Java, you see some different ones there. We'll take a look at that closer, but let's look at RES. I'll expand drawable. And you see there's a background.xml. I can double click it, see what it does. Looks like it's controlling this is for the background. It's controlling the width, the height, viewport height, viewport width, color. Now, you got all the colors memorized? Probably not, right? There's a list somewhere, I'm guessing. Let me copy this. Go to Google Chrome. Let's see, Control V. So this I didn't know Google had this. Pops up, and this shows you what that particular color represents. And in Google Chrome, you could move this around like this, or you could change it to a different spectrum. And let's say I want that purple instead. Well, then if I would take this code here, copy it, I could come over here and I could paste that in. Now, if you like using that color select over in Google, you could, but over here on the left side, you see this little square box. If I double click that, this has its own color picker, because it wouldn't be very useful if you had to know all those numbers. And again, same idea here. You pick what range you want down here, and then you can pick within that spectrum. Now up at top here, you see there's specifically RGB. Everybody know what that stands for?
Red, green, blue.
Red, green, blue. That's a common way to reference a color. And it's kind of a, I'm not sure if primitive is the right way. Basic. It's a basic color scheme. Now if I do the drop down here, you see there's HSB. You know what HSB stands for? I don't either. RGB is the one I deal with most. If I had to guess, I'm guessing hue something, but I don't know. And then here's RGB, but here's ARGB.
Oh, it's hue, saturation, brightness.
Hue, saturation, and brightness. Okay.
Hue, saturation, brightness.
Okay. So you can choose a color. I didn't change anything, but if I click that, choose color there, and click choose, then it changes it appropriately. Some of these you maybe don't want to change because it's set by the system, and if you change it, you'll probably break it. Let's see, path data, stroke color, stroke width. I could not tell you what all these different items do, but we don't need to know that. We do need to know some of them, and what we'll be talking about is that the semester goes on. And here's a foreground XML. Again, that was the background. This is the foreground, and you can change different color schemes here. Now, if I double-click layout over here under RES, we got our activity full screen. And tells us tools, layout width, layout height, background. You might look at some of this and say, well, a lot of that's kind of repeated. Well, there's different parts to it. If you think about, is an app just one screen? No. So there's a lot of areas that you could control on this. Sometimes an app you can have many screens, can't you?
Yeah.
As you're sitting there, doing whatever. Again, backgrounds here, full screen activity, text view. Now you see this refers to at string, and then dummy content. If I double click values over here, you see there's a strings.xml. And if I double click that, see how there's a dummy underscore content?
Yes.
Where is that at? Too many screens open. Let me close foreground, background. Okay. So over here, I'm wanting to write a string for the text, and I'm defining the string over here in this XML file. Anybody know what the /n does? It's a Unix, Linux holdover. Means goes to the next line. So if I wanted to have it go down 2 lines, I put /n/n. There's other codes that go along. Some you can use here, some you can't. I can change this. Yeah, I don't like that. It's highlighting that. There it goes. Cali /n college. Now, what do you think this string is controlling? Yeah, what appears on the button, right? So if I go and look at the button, it's probably referring to this. There it is. So you see how that's referring to string and then dummy button? Now, again, if I want to change what that button says, I can come over here and say, click here. If you want to define new strings in your app, well, there's one way you can do it is you can just type it in. If you do string name equals num1 text something, and then I wanted to say this is a number. So now I've just created a new string that I can use. String. We're going to talk more about this after we go over some of the layout here, but that's a programming construct, and I think I mentioned that before. Never remember what a string is? A string can contain letters. A, B, C, special letters, ampersand, whatever you want to put in. There are some limits. You can't put quotes in there. You have to do that a different way. Because if you put quotes in there, it ends it. For example, this one right here, if I put quotes in the name itself, see how it breaks it? In programming, oftentimes when you have a starting something, you have to have an ending something. In this case, the quotes. Now, if I come here and put a quote here, I don't know if it'll break it or not. Let's see. That looked like it took it. Some cases, when you put that in there, it won't work. Now, this is called num1 underscore text. If I came over here, I could change this to num1. Now, notice how as I start typing that, it pops up. So it tries to come up with possible choices based on what you start typing. That's called code completion, just generally. And you can double click this, and then it'll fill that in for you. So now for that button, it'll display something different. Now this won't. I think it'll give us an error if I go to design now. Gives us an error. Now what tells me there's an error is this little exclamation mark here. If I do click that, tells you there's a render problem, and I can expand that. And it says failed to load this action bar with unknown error. Tip, try to refresh the layout. Doesn't work. Some of these layouts don't work, and that's the part I'm still trying to figure out. Some of them do work. So I'll be able to change this to a different layout after we get done playing and show you one that actually does work. That's frustrating because we did make some changes, but even if you don't make any changes, you start a new project, it'll come up with an error. It doesn't work. So that's frustrating. You haven't changed anything and it's broke to begin with. But that's a world of open source sometimes. Okay. So now if I go back to my Android or strings.xml, over here, you start typing the less than, and it pops up with all these different items. So you can define an integer. I don't know, say age. And how old do you think I am?
49. As a trap.
49. And so I've just defined, this is like defining a global variable, one that you can use anywhere in your program. An integer is, like I say, we'll talk more about this when we get to the programming. We'll talk about program elements. An integer is a number with no decimals. Some programming languages refer to that as a decimal integer. Does that seem to make sense, that name? I never have Googled that to see why in the world they call it that. Because decimal implies it has what? Decimal. An integer, by definition, is a number with no decimals. So, I'm sure there's a reason for it. Now, if I do a greater than again, there's an array. We're going to talk about what an array is. Boolean. This is like a flag. So whether they've checked something or not. So maybe upload is what I'll call it. That's a name I'm giving it. And I'm not sure if it should be uppercase. Okay, lowercase. Now, what this is set maybe originally is it's set to true. That means that whatever they finish in your app, it's going to upload data when it's done. I'm just thinking from a design standpoint. And then if they check a box or something, it'll change that to false. So a Boolean is a true or false flag. If I'm hungry, I'm going to go, last night I was hungry. So if I was hungry, I went and ate at Arby's. Is that a true or false statement? The if I'm hungry? Yeah, I'm either hungry or I'm not hungry. So that's what I'm talking about with Boolean. It's either true or false. Let's see. Looks like you can design a color. So if you have you want to reference a color, you don't want to hard code it in your code somewhere, but you want to reference it in your resources, then you can define a color. Now I'm gonna try this because I never have done this with the color. Just color. And that's disappointing. I was hoping it'd appear a little box over on the side. I'm guessing if I use this, it'll work, but let's see.
Oh, yeah, it does.
That's kind of backwards. So it looks like you have to put a color there before your little box appears. Now you can click the box and change to wherever you want. Now some, and like I say, I haven't actually tried this, but some will allow you to actually just type in a color. That didn't look good. Nope. How about color dot or color colon? Oh well. But you can define a color. Now this is set up such that then programmatically, if you want to retrieve this, so you can set something at runtime. People are red-green colorblind. If you design your color scheme, and you'd want to do that a little bit differently, but if you set your color scheme up with red, will they use your app? No. And well, who cares? You know, red green. How many people are red green colorblind? You know, probably not a huge amount, right? If you're trying to sell your app, that's probably maybe not a consideration. If you're a college, they don't have a choice. You're supposed to, oh, what's that called? ADA compliance. So if they designed an app and it had anything that was color coded like that, you had to be able to change it. When I worked at IFR, I wrote my I called it Midas. I guess I was egotistical. Everybody knows who Midas is, right? The king that was he a king?
Yes.
That touched on a thing, everything he touched turned golden. So I thought my program was so good, I'm gonna call it Midas. It actually stood for something, manufacturing, something, something. I don't even remember now. And I rolled out the program, and then a lady over in customer service, she said, called me up. Well, her manager did, but then I talked with her, and she could not see the colors that I was using. So I wasn't going with the standard Windows colors. She needed uh, a background that was very contrasted. I don't even remember what colors I put. It was horrendous. It was like a background with yellow or something like that. Something that just really jumped out at her. But she had some kind of vision issues. Um, Now you wouldn't necessarily use individual colors in that, but I suppose if you had a simple enough app and you wanted them to be able to change color, you could. Okay. Oops. Guess that's all the exciting stuff for now. Notice I just left the less than there without closing it. It's got a red squiggly. So that tells you there's an issue. It says tag name expected. So I'll delete that. And now there's also styles down here. Styles XML. And as I look at this, you see we got app theme, and then down here you got full screen theme, full screen action bar style. So this is where you're defining what something looks like. Up here for the app theme, we have these different colors defined, don't we? Let me copy this. I'm just curious. And I'll paste it down here. Now, what's wrong with it's got a little red squiggly. What's wrong with it? The what? The duplicates because of the name. So how do you think I'd fix it? Yeah. So in theory, you should just be able to change the name like that. Part of the problem is sometimes you can get away with that, sometimes you can't, because that'll sometimes break things in other parts of your code. So you have to be careful about changing XML without fully understanding what it's doing. Now over here, you see I have the colors again. I can click those colors. Yeah, I think I can. Is that big? Can you click yours? That's interesting. What if I broke it by putting that in there? Let's see. Get rid of that. Huh. Interesting. Now, you see, as I look at this now, I now know how to do color. So what do you think I need to start the color with? The at color. And now, try it again. At color. When it pops up with here, then these are the ones I can pick. At color. Where do you think that might come from? Might be this, except there's no S, is there? See how this says colors? Let's double click it. And color primary dark, color accent. That kind of looks like what we have over here. I'm guessing it isn't because it doesn't say colors, but we'll see. So if I come here and change this, color name equals color David, and give it some kind of code so it'll pop up with a window, and choose a range. Choose a color like that. Okay, so now I got color David. So the question becomes, if I do a @color on the other, will it pop up with this new color I can use? Where was that? That was under styles. Yeah. Okay, so color primary. So let me backspace on that. And what do you see now? Color David. I'm really surprised by that. Because it does say @color. That must mean there's some other kind of connection between that code there and what we're seeing here. Of course, I see it. What do these start with? They start with color without an S. So that's where it's coming from. You can come over here and define any color you wanted. Maybe I want to define my button color. All F's must be white or whatever that is. So then I double click that. I used to know those. I guess 255, 255, 255. It looks like all white. What do you think black is? I'm wondering. Yeah. Looks like zeros, doesn't it? Not that I get it down that far. There it goes. 0, 0, 0. So you choose black. Do you see why knowing XML is critical for this? Because you can do so many changes in XML. And you have to go in XML in some cases to actually fix stuff, which we'll talk about. Okay, so that's under styles. We've got our color. You notice here it says that for this item, action bar style, the action bar style, it says we're going to do an @style. So where do you think we're going to find that defined at? We got an @style. Where do you think we're going to find that defined at? Yeah, probably in styles.xml. If I double click that. Wait a minute, I'm in styles, aren't I? So @style full screen, action bar style. That's defined down here, isn't it? Oh, that's funny. They got one style referring to another style. Now, it looks like the only thing it's getting from there is what? The background. Everything else is unique to this. It's in design purposes, you have things that are children and parents. So you have a parent component, and then you have your children component that are based upon that. So it inherits all the elements. What do you notice about this this window here? It looks like every other standard Windows, doesn't it? I do the drop down here on one of these. There is a little bit of configuration here, but this looks like the interaction of every other Windows. Now, from a programming standpoint, if every one of them looks the same, do you want to recreate those every time you write a program? No, it's the same code, right? Why would you want to recreate it? So what you want to do is you'll come over here and you want to steal that code and reuse it. So this would be like your parent, and your child would use all of these. If we go to Amazon, actually, let me go Google first. How many products are on Amazon? 12 million products. Here's a deal a day. I don't want to click up because I don't know what it is. I'll click on this. This is something. Okay, this is a dot echo. Does that look like every other Amazon page? Does, doesn't it? How about if they wanted to change what this button looks like? People get confused. They don't like this, whatever this picture is. They want it to look like more like a shopping cart. How many pages would you have to change if each one was defined separately? A lot. 12 million pages, right? You got 12 million products on there. You'd have 12 million pages to change. How long would it take you to change 12 million pages? A long time. So the idea is, how can you implement things using like a parent, a parent template, and then you got your children. The children template get that, so you change it in one place. Amazon doesn't change 12 million web pages; they change it in one place, and it automatically goes down to all of them. From a app development standpoint, that's why this inherits. So this is inheriting the action bar style from here. So what happens if I have 50 places that inherit that, and I want to make a change to it? Like down here, I don't want it to be a black overlay. I want it to be something else. I change it in one place, and it automatically gets reflected in every XML element that uses it. Does that make sense on the reuse of it? Okay. That's why you define these colors. You're saying, well, that's stupid. Why do I have to define the colors here? If I use this name Color David in 50 places in my app, I got a really extensive app. Maybe I'm using it in 50 places. If I want to change a color, I have to change it in 50 places, don't I? Instead, if I refer to Color David, then all I have to do is come here, double click this, and say, well, people tell me they hate green. And I come over here and change this to purple or pink or whatever that is. And it's automatically propagated to those 50 places. So I know it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense to define all these over here, but it actually does from a design standpoint. Okay. Let's see, styles we've looked at, so I'm going to close that. I don't think we've looked at attributes. So double click that. It doesn't appear like there's a whole lot here. It says declare current theme attributes to allow changing which styles are used for button bars upon the API level. Close that. Close colors. Close strings. And expand mid map. IC launcher, expand that. And these look like just images. Probably double click it, and it'll bring this up. Now you got some tools you can use to work with here, but probably it's not going to be real extensive. Looks like there's color picker. If I click the color picker, everybody know what a color picker is? Yeah. You come over here and you can choose a different color to use. The beauty of a color picker is I can come over somewhere here and click in there, and that tells me which color that is. Now, the really good color picker, and I don't know if this one does it, a really good color picker, when you choose the little item there, it'll let you bring up other windows. I don't see it doing that in this case. Looks like it disappears what's on the screen. See how I'm choosing my Snagit red down there? And see how it appears red? Which means if I had this not full screen, get that. If I really like this blue here, I come to my color picker, and I come over and choose a shade of blue like that, and then choose. So now once I have that, then some of these other tools that maybe use that, I can then apply that. Show grid, zoom in, zoom out, actual size. Very primitive. You know, I'd take this in paint.net if I really want to do, much. Here's another launcher. There's one. And here's a XML. And round. See what's there. Shows you a round image. So if you use that. And again, we have XML. I think I've went over all of those. Is there any questions on what those XML control and so forth? Okay. Now from the, we'll look at the programming side here in a minute, but I'm going to close this. So go ahead and do a file close. And we're going to choose a new Android project. Choose My Application. Click Next. Choose basic activity, I guess. And choose Finish. Right from the very beginning, I haven't done anything that's broke. Let's say if I click this show warnings and errors, we got a render problem. That's what I'm still investigating. Latest thing I'm looking at is the downloading the beta version. What does beta mean? Yeah, not fully bugs all worked out, maybe has some issues. But does this already have issues? It's already broke, right? So it's just like I'm trying to, what kind of headaches will I have if I try to do that? But that's beyond. Now up here, it says Nexus 4. You can do the drop down, and this is where you can choose a different test machine. Yeah. And you can choose whatever you want. You can choose a no memory. I think I set up here's AVD Nexus 5X API. Down here, you can choose that. Still doesn't help. It still broke. But that's how you can choose a different target platform to work on. Or simply to see what it's going to look like. Like there's a Nexus and Pixel 2 XL, I think is what you said. So you can change that. I'm going to put it back to the AVD. This right next to it. Put your mouse over it. API version editor. Over on this side, orientation editor, and select design service. If I do the drop down there, probably I think if you choose the design, that might be your best one. But design just shows this one alone. Here's blueprint. Okay, so we got design chose. And let me zoom out a little bit. If I close this window, or just make it smaller. Now, right here where it says no action bar, if I click that, this will pop up with themes. A lot of these themes aren't working for some reason. That's what I'm investigating. If I come up here and choose the top one, the theme here, and click OK, changes what it looks like, doesn't it? Now, unfortunately, it looks like I still have the error. So let me come up here and choose black and click OK. Okay. That's strange. I was trying that on my computer at home, and theme and black were working. Let's see if we can get any of these to work. I'm going to dig into that more. I was able to use specifically the two I used at home were the theme and black, and they get around that error. But that's insane. It's the same software I have on my computer at home because I've made sure I updated my version to be the compliant with this. Really? That's insane. Translucent.
It's just dark.
Oh, it's a dark theme.
I went in material dark.
Material dark.
Got no action bar, translation.
Probably looking right at it. Oh, right here? Okay. And that worked for you, but it doesn't work for me. That working for everybody except for me? Only working on one person? Who else is working? Two. So half of us is working on, half it isn't. It's insane. Oh, which phone do you have chose?
I had the Nexus 5X.
So you have the same one as me. Huh. What this error means when it says render problem, it says failed to find coordinator layout style in current theme. If I copy that and do a find, somewhere in one of these files, it's not defined correctly. So that's why it's giving us the error. Going through and figuring out where exactly you need to fix it, though, isn't a trivial task.
Mine says it's a layout width and height.
Yours gives you a different error. Interesting. But anyway, worst case, we'll go to a different tool for creating apps. I got another one we could use, but this is kind of the main one. But I'm not sure why the installation is having so many issues on this. I thought about going back to a different version. Sometimes when you got open source, they'll have versions back. Because my YouTube video has the most hits. Is which one do you think? Based on what subject? How to do an app tutorial, and it's how to add two numbers. And that version, everything works perfectly. Nothing's broke. Anyway, let's talk about the programming side. Now, if I come over here and I expand the app and go to Java, then if you expand these, you see main activity, example instrumented test, example unit test. If I double click main activity, this brings up some Java code. And this is where we're going to put our focus now, is just general programming concepts. Doesn't matter what programming language you use, these programming constructs will be true. So let me bring up Word so I can document this as we go along. We talked about variables. Did we talk about variables in here? We talked about it in the second class. Did we talk about it in here too? You got data types. And data types, there's integers. These are numbers with no decimals. Now, there's a certain range that can be defined with an integer. There's double or a float. And this is numbers with decimals. Although float has a little bit different meaning. I'll get there eventually. Okay. Now you define these in different ways in programming languages. Like over here, on create options menu. When do you think this is called? on when it create the options menu. Yeah, so the title of it kind of tells you what it's going to do. If you go ahead in your code and press enter after the comment, and I'll talk more about comments here in a minute, but that's this line here with 2 slashes. If I type int space a in Java, that defines that variable. Means I can use it now. Down here in the code, I could say a is equal to 5. I think I gave you the example before of thinking of a variable as like a cell in your brain. And you set aside that for a particular reason, and then you store data in it. If you'd asked me a month ago, Android Studio, I stored a data cell in my brain. It says I love Android Studio. With this newest version, what do you think's happened? Yeah, I've replaced it. So I hate this newest version of Android Studio. I wish I could go back to the previous version. So that's something you can change. So I can change this to something else. I could say a is equal to 6, for example. Now that's defined in an integer. So an example, int a. Semicolon ends that line. Tells it, okay, we're done with that. Go to the next one. Now for the double. I come up here and I start typing. Notice how I start typing double and it pops up with all the different things that start with DO. Again, that's code completion. And if I do a tab, and then I could say B and then semicolon. That right there defines a double. Means down here, I can say B is equal to 3.2. Because remember, a double is a number with decimals. Now, I don't think this one Java has float. Oh, I lied to you. It does have float. Like that. C is equal to 3.2. Now here, it says incompatible types. It says required float and found double. With float, we'll take a look at that later, but that's a different type of number that you can work with. So it's like, well, why have all these types of numbers? Well, let me see if I can Google it. Java and data types, range values. I think that'll give it to me. You can have something defined as a byte. The range of values can be stored, goes from negative 128 to 127. You can have something defined as short, which is negative 32,768 to 32,767. You can have something that's defined as an integer. Integer goes up to, what is that, million, billion? So what would happen, do you think, if you put something bigger than a billion or 2 billion? Probably give you an error. I'm guessing. You know, if I went over here, I don't know if it catches it at runtime. But if I said A is equal to that, notice how it gives me a little red squiggly underneath. Integer number too large. If my life depended upon it, I couldn't tell you the range of values for integer. That's why I had to Google it. Most programmers can't because you don't really deal with numbers that large, you know, in a program. And you have long, which goes up to millions, billions, trillions. What's after trillions? Gazillions? Bazillions? I don't know. Making that up. It's a lot larger number, isn't it? Now, I think that comes from this site. Floating point. Float is 4 bytes. Double is 8 bytes. And anybody know what this E negative 308, E 308? I think that's a typo. I think that should be 38, but anyway. Something's a typo here. No, this should be 308 because double's larger. It handles a bigger range of numbers. If that was a 308, which it should be, you got 1.7, and what's that E do? Scientific notation. That says 1.7 times 10 to the 308 power, which means you have 308 zeros. That's a huge number, isn't it? But specifically, it's got your decimals here, so it's got a wide range of values. It takes 8 bytes. Integer only takes 4 bytes. It takes half as much. Good programming practice is you don't define variables unnecessarily. You don't make everything as big as it can be. With Java, you can dump every library there is into your app, thinking, okay, these will all be here if I need them. What happens when you run it on your phone then? It's super slow because it has to load everything in. What if you can go down to Walmart? You leave your house. What do you grab? Wallet and phone? Keys? Yeah. The what? Clothes. Could you get a U-Haul and load it? The what?
Just in case he hears out to Walmart.
Right.
Or someone spilled hot sewage.
Could you load up a U-Haul?
I feel like you were a traumatized child.
Now, could you rent a U-Haul, load everything in your house, and take to Walmart with you?
I mean, I
Big
don't
U-Haul.
suggest it, but
The what? Yeah. That way, you got your couch handy. If you want to pull your couch out so you can sit in the Walmart parking lot, you can. If somebody, yeah, if there's some kind of mess in the parking lot, you could pull out your vacuum. You could pull out the mop, clean it.
yeah,
They got all kinds of new stuff.
solar panel.
Yeah.
Set it outside.
Is it reasonable for you to bring all that to Walmart? It's not. And that's with a program. You only want to bring over what you need and the smallest amount that you need. Because the less memory you take, then the faster it'll run. There's a person here that asked me yesterday to look at her laptop, and it was running really slow. And I went and looked, and she had quite a few things running in memory. Cortana. Do you want to run Cortana if you don't got much memory?
Well, you can't really turn it on.
Hopefully there's a way.
Didn't we already talk about how you can't turn Cortana off? You can't turn all that stuff off.
Yeah, you can't turn off.
The CI.
Well, see, I
stalking you.
yeah.
We've just got the
But see, I got that's what I told her. I said I got a program at home. I think that'll be able to shut all this off. It's sys internals is what it was called, and I want to make sure it works on Windows 10 before I do it on her PC. But Cortana was using a good chunk of memory. Bonjour service.
Yeah.
That can be definitely uninstalled, and I wouldn't even need the sys internals to do that.
Apple.
It's Apple. Yeah. And I said, do you use iTunes at all in this? I said, no. It's like, we don't need this. So, yeah, you want to have least amount so it runs fast.
Cortana's taking up quite a bit of memory. Like 8 gigabyte.
You know, I didn't even look at the RAM because that wasn't really an option to increase that. I was just looking at what was running.
Look
So.
at performance tells you.
Yeah.
Give her a flash drive.
Okay, so this talks about that, and then it talks about even characters down here, maybe what space they use. Because we can have one character, but I don't see where it defines that. Does that make sense, the difference between those? The difference between those data types? Like if I wanted to declare big A. Let's try it again. Come up here. If I type lawn, big A. Yeah, it's still too large, isn't it? Still too big. What was lawn? Maybe I don't remember what lawn was. Should be able to handle that. Huh. I don't know. I don't ever use that, so to be honest. I use int and double. Now, you notice here, these are left aligned, aren't they? Good programming practice says you should have them on the same level as that. When you find yourself writing programs, if you do not do this, it'll cause you a lot of headaches. Okay, so that's those two. You got a string, and this is where you can have a mixture of letters and numbers. An example is David 1. That's a string, mixture of letters and numbers. Now over here, it's not as, see if I start typing string here and then I say test. It's not the same as the other ones. See how the other ones popped up with these being bold, but this is not bold? It's because it's not one of our fundamental data types. String comes from this right here, java.lang. So it's defined. What does that mean? Somebody's written code in order for you to use this. So some things are like fundamental, and somebody else has written something so you can use it. That's a lot of things with programming, is you don't have to recode it because somebody's already done it. Makes it easy. All we have to do is assign it like that. Now I notice I have quotes around it. I mentioned earlier you have to be careful where you put your, like if I try to put a double quote in here, notice what it does? Breaks it. So there is a way to put a double quote in there, and I don't remember how it is. I think you have to put a slash double quote, or maybe slash slash. Yeah, that looks like it worked. What that allows you to do is allows you to embed that in there. Now, how about if I put a slash in here? What do you think that's going to do? Goes to the next line. So that's how you can put special characters within your string in Java. Let me see if I can go to Google again. So I couldn't tell you all the different ones. I think /t is tab. Java control /n/t. New line. New line, tab. What are all the escape characters? Most of them you don't use. You can find the full list here. Java was designed by Oracle. No, I'm lying. It wasn't designed by Oracle. It's owned by Oracle now. Yeah, that came out wrong. A lot of people weren't happy when Oracle obtained them, because then I don't really know. They haven't done anything bad since they took over the Java. /T is how you put a tab in there. /B is insert a backspace in the text. Now, I have no clue. I've never used that. I have no clue when you'd ever want to put a backspace in a text. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me. It's like, well, you're going to go back one and delete the character that's in front of it? Well, just delete it to begin with. Insert a new line in text at this point. /N is the one you probably use the most. /R I've never used. Insert a carriage return. /F insert a form feed. /single quote. /double quote. // Where this is used at. I have used these weird characters like this before. We had a Tiger printer at IFR. And what the printer would do is it print barcodes. And it was a special one. So we could put it on the back of spectrum analyzers. Like for Kali, they've put these labels on here. And these are ones they bought with numbers and so forth. Well, you ever peel off something, and it said don't peel this off or you void the warranty? Yeah. That's what the idea was, is we put this on the spectrum analyzer at IFR, and they'd peel it off. It's a special label that would leave parts of it on there, so that if they did something like that, we would know it. Used to be they bought these metal plates that they would put on the boxes, and then we went to that because it's cheaper. You can tell if somebody's been messing with it and so forth. You might say, well, what does it matter? Well, if I got an older spectrum analyzer that's broke and I buy a new one, you can think of this from a Walmart standpoint. I bought an HP 6 months ago. They still have that HP at Walmart. I go down and buy a new one. Then I could take the old one, put it back in the box, and take it back to Walmart, right? And say, this isn't working. Get my money, and I have a new machine. What would prevent somebody from doing that?
As soon as you turn your computer on, you have to register.
You have to register it. They don't look that close at Walmart, though, I don't think. Nothing would prevent you, would it? So you could actually.
Well, there's a system in place for people to stop doing that Nintendo created, because in the 80s they had a lot of people doing that.
Exactly.
The NES.
Yeah, and that's, you're exactly right. People do that stuff, don't they? Especially when your model isn't changed very much. Like has a PlayStation 4 changed probably much? No. Yeah. The what? Yeah. So it really is curious to me that they don't have some mechanism. Maybe they do. I never have tried this. That they don't have some kind of mechanism at Walmart to prevent that. Because then that would cause you can go down and just get a new PS4 whenever you want. Replace your PS4 for every 6 months until Walmart comes out with PS5. Yeah, that's a.
You can only do returns 3 times a year, though.
Is that their limit on that?
Never return anything else.
That one Walmart at a time.
No, they take your license. I think it's universal.
Is it?
I think so.
So they did come up with some way to prevent it.
Yeah.
That's good.
You have to have a license for anything over $25.
So IFR, they came up with that because they wanted a label to do that. When I printed to the label from a program, I had to pass it special codes. So it'll cause it to inch forward or do things like that. So if you're wondering when would you use special codes, that's the case. So if you...
it's been in place in Michigan for over a year. So I don't know.
I was gonna say, it's 2 years ago I returned my 3DS or something. Not quite. They didn't have
Your brother's written that app to talk to devices. It could be the devices need some kind of special code that you got to pass it. And so that's where these codes come in handy. You can hard code in. You have to read the documentation on whatever you're communicating with and see what it's looking for in terms of, like I may need a slash this in order to start the communication process.
Is that basically when Apple has the two-part factorization thingy for authentication? Like now, if I sign, like on those computers, if I sign in with my Apple ID, it has to text me a message with a code, and then I have to enter the code, and then it'll actually let me walk.
Sort of, but it's kind of like an invisible code. Like if I were to embed these in here, embed this space in here, you would not actually see it if you printed off the text. You might have a bunch of /t's and you wouldn't be able to actually see it. Now the result is becomes apparent when you send it to your printer or whatever. And I don't know anything about the natural gas, so I'm probably way off on the. It's more of a printing thing, is where you really see these codes. Go down to the next line. Now it used to be worse than this. It used to be it wasn't universal like this. I used to try to print to a dot matrix printer. Oh, that was a horrible program I wrote at IFR. They had these dot matrix. Nobody knows what a dot matrix is, do they? It's like a cheap printer, like $20, and it print labels and it dot at a time is what it did. And so you'd hear it. And I had to send it these weird codes, and every time that silly thing broke, it was just a nightmare to work on. So they went to the new codes like this and made it much easier. Think about it from that backspace. If you're using some kind of special printer and you go down to the next line, you're right here, and you want to go back 10 spaces, you need to pass it how many /b's? 10. Yeah, you pass 10 /b's and you're back to here where you can then print. So you have total control over the print head, where you want it to print at. So that's the idea behind at least a printing standpoint. And see how you can embed it wherever you want? Like here, I put the slash quote and then /quotes. And then when it prints it, it'll put the quotes there. So anyway, probably a lot more than you wanted to know about strings. But this is the basics of programming. So then there's Boolean. And this is true or false. Now I could equally have a string that said yes or no. So, and sometimes I do that just because I want it to look good. I don't like Booleans. So if I declare a string up here as a flag, like that, assuming flag isn't a reserved word, then down here I could say flag is equal to yes. Now versus, you declare it as Boolean, and I'll call it B flag. And then B flag is going to equal to true. Which one looks more readable? You like that better? Some people might. So I like this. Yes and no. Am I hungry? Yes. Am I hungry? No. So to me that relates better with your normal thinking. Are you hungry? Boolean.true. What? Now they accomplish the same purpose. I think this is more readable. Other people may think this is more readable. The Boolean takes less memory. That's why, from a programming standpoint, it's preferable. Now, you also have an array, which is a list of something. That's really vague. We're going to talk more about arrays probably next time. We got a lot of programming topics to cover. So you could have a list of numbers. If you got an app where you're writing an app to figure out an average of a set of numbers, so you would have an array of numbers. So you can read those into an array, and then you can work with it. You don't have to have these all on separate lines. Like if I want to come down here and say int num1, comma, num2, comma, num3, num4, you can have however many you want. I suppose there is a limit, but you can declare them all in one line. So variables can all be on one line. On one line. Can't type today. But must be the same type. So they must be the same type. Which means I can't do int num1 float b2. I don't think you can anyway. See, it gives me an error. I think even if I put a comma here, it would still give me an error. It gives me 2 errors. Now we have the assignment. Ooh, it's 9:18. So we're ready for the assignment operator. I'm going to go ahead and stop there, and I'm going to save this. Android programming topics. Shift Control F.